When I was younger and my kids were a little younger and we would drive places together, I remember something I would do that would always it would be a way of teasing them. It would always get a reaction out of them, especially my daughter. I don't think my son really cared as much. But we'd be driving somewhere down a road, down like a road that's someplace a little bit off the beaten path, and there'd be some dilapidated, former house, the remains of a house, but it had all fallen in on itself, and it had clearly been abandoned. You see lots of those on country roads in certain places, and I would always say, man, that's where I'm going to move. I'm going to move right there. That's my new home. And my daughter would be like, Daddy, why do you want to move to a yucky house? And it was a fun way of teasing the kids, and especially my daughter. But it was also I was also expressing a reality about how I felt. And that was, I'm always someone, first of all, I've always found dilapidation to be strangely beautiful. And I think that it is. I think you will have to admit that it is. It's not what you would expect, but look at a yard that's totally gone to seed, or a house that's been abandoned for years. Take a picture of it, and it's like there's something about that appeals in much more than seeing some really well kept house that's where all the rooms are well furnished and everything's been swept, and all the floors have been swept and mopped, and everything is in good condition. It doesn't have the same. It's. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking keeping up having a clean house. But it doesn't have the same aesthetic effect to me that dilapidation has. I don't know why that is, but I think what I was also expressing was something along the lines of what I discussed in my recent video about how things have changed in the last half a decade. And that is, there's always been a part of me that wants to not have to deal with the things that we're told we're supposed to have to deal with in life. Finding a job, buying a house, checking these things off your checklist, and it's becoming harder and harder to do that nowadays. The good life is so elusive, to quote the Gang of Four. But they were quite prophetic in that song. But I think that it's also my awareness that there's a greater and greater hostility towards places that are off the beaten path, that are not pruned and well and trimmed and well kept. There's a gentrification effort, and this is happening I talked in my previous video about how this is taking place in professional sports. I focus on baseball especially, and I said, well, it's nice that baseball stadiums are more aesthetically pleasing than they were in the 70s and 80s with the cookie cutter structures that were put up then. The downside is, that they're sort of making everything into like a glorified amusement park. Whereas in 1981 you could go to a Major League Baseball game and just watch the game, and like there was some entertainment provided by the organist, and sometimes they would try to get they'd play da-da-da-da-da, and have us yell charge or something like that, or get us to do a clap, but mostly it was not very intrusive, and it was not at all like an amusement park experience. It was a much more relaxed experience. You could go and focus on the game and like just keep score if that's what you're interested in doing, or you could talk to your companion or companions while the game was going on, or you could just get lost in thought. Any of those options were fine, or anything else you wanted to do, as long as you weren't, if you were bothering other people, that's different, but they weren't trying to get you to have a good time all the time. There wasn't this effort at I said bread and circuses. This is more like this, just the circuses everywhere. Aren't they fun? I think in a wider sense there's an effort to gentrify much of the world, so that all those grimy little corners, all those little dive bars or little whatever kind of places that maybe were a little dingy or grungy before. I'm not saying there aren't plenty of dingy and grungy places, but I think there's more of an effort to just paper it all over, and I think that's a result of this larger push to gentrify. And I have some questions about that, about the motivation for that. Maybe this push to gentrify came out of a good place on the part of our social planners, but I'm not inclined to trust our social planners any farther than I could throw them, and I would like to throw them a long way, if you know what I mean. If I got my hands on them, I'd do a few things to them, because I think they're mostly pretty evil people. So I think part of what is up with this gentrification, this attempt to gentrify everything, and when I say everything, of course I'm being hyperbolic. Not everything's getting gentrified, but I think if you pay attention, you'll see like things are getting revamped. Like, oh, it's so much nicer. This looks so much nicer than it looked before. There's almost this imperative to spruce things up, and I talked about a ballpark experience last time, and it's come full circle for the Atlanta Braves. And I'm just talking about the Atlanta Braves because that's my hometown team. And Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, the stadium that they played in the 70s, 80s, and first half of the 90s, was not a very inspiring structure. It was a cookie cutter stadium, like many that had been built at around that time. And sometime in the 90s, in the latter part of the 90s, they decided to start building new ballparks that looked more like the ballparks of yore, or like brought back the baseball feeling. So there was less of like just making cookie cutter, circular donut structures with no real aesthetics to speak of, and there became to be more of an interest in building these kinds of stadiums that recalled, like where things were maybe asymmetrical in places, but they were built with character. They were built in order to enhance the pleasantness of the environs and so forth. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in isolation, but what comes along with that trend is this effort to just follow after you wherever you go and try to, it's like everything is, like I said, there's an effort to corporatize extensively, let's just say to an extensive degree. So the example that I used was, I talked about how, in a lot of gas stations you can't start to pump gas into your tank without the screen coming on and you getting entertained with something, quote unquote entertained, with some flashy, splashy little spectacle. What if you don't want the TV to come on? Well, you don't have any choice. That's just part of the experience of pumping gas right now. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, well, first world problems, man. I'm not meaning to blow this out of proportion. I'm talking about how it all adds up to something. So if you want to do that, first world problems, bro, yeah, first world problems deal, then you are not welcome here, and you're being disingenuous, because that's not what I'm talking about. So the idea is you're surrounded by, and I brought up the Atlanta Braves experience, like the stadium that they are currently housed in, Truist Park, which is in the suburbs. Nothing wrong with that, but it's also surrounded by a place called the Battery, and it's like, if you visit the area, everything is streamlined, everything is, it has the feel, it has this feel of an ultra-contrived neighborhood. Contrived because it was obviously just recently built, and because it was built for a purpose. It's like, I keep comparing it to theme parks. When you're walking through Disney World, that this is a contrived setting, and the idea is to make everything fun. You can eat over here. You can play this game over here. Your kid can run around and see how hard he can throw a baseball over here, and then like I said, in between innings, there's all this stuff that's they play really loudly over the screen. So no, it's like there's not this. What used to be the case was that you could go to a place, a baseball park, just to use that as an example, and yeah, maybe it's a little dingy, maybe it's a little run down, maybe the turf isn't as well kept up as it needs to be. But there's not just this all-out attack on your senses. And this effort to numb you, with pleasure left and right, or just fun all over the place. It's kind of like being in a video arcade or being in a casino. That's the feel that it has now, where it's loud and it's busy, and they're trying to entice you to do stuff, and it's built with that notion in mind of enticing you to for your sense receptors to be fully engaged, to be over-engaged, to be overindulged. It seems to me this is what they're trying to do with more and more of the world, in that every time I see something, well, what is the phrase? Build back better, right? Well, who says what's better? Who says what's better? What makes something better than it was before? Maybe you knock down, you burn paradise and put up a parking lot, but maybe you knock down some dingy old cafe and you put up a really snazzy Chick-fil-A in its place. Nothing wrong with Chick-fil-A, nothing wrong with snazzy, but it's just the whole idea. This whole idea of, I think, this greater trend towards trying to preoccupy people, that seems to trying to overindulge people's senses. There's something to me a little down the road, along the lines of Brave New World. There's something Brave New Worldian about these efforts. I don't think it's just done benignly. I don't think that anything that our rulers do or ordain to be done is benign. So that's why, just to bring it full circle, that's why I was always very drawn to these houses that were falling down, these dilapidated structures on some country road. I just thought, I don't want to jump through your hoops. Like maybe I'll just live in this, rat-infested husk of a former house, and I don't have to be enticed into living in the paradise that you're building for me. And I think the paradise that they're building, the paradise that they are supposedly building for us, is the paradise where we own nothing and we're happy. What's the difference between, somebody living in a pod, in the future, living in a little just a little room where you you come out of your pod in the morning, and then they serve you your GMO breakfast, and through chutes that come down through the ceiling, and and then you put on your your work suit, which is the same as the same jumpsuit that everybody else is wearing, and then you walk to your job along the same road that everybody else is walking down. Everybody's dressed the same. Everybody looks the same. What's the difference between living like that and living in the wilderness? Finding shelter in a dilapidated home, overrun with wildlife. Well, the difference is the person living in the dilapidated home is free to a much greater extent than the one living in the pod and eating whatever is sent to him through the tubes, scarfing down their GMO food and going to the job that he was assigned and getting his what's it called? I keep thinking BMI, but that's not it. Annual credit, their income. You get it. So you get a certain amount of money. Everybody gets a certain amount of money every year, so you get your check every month, and that's doled out to you, and that's your portion. That's what they're trying to build for us. I didn't touch on the trend towards cashlessness. I don't think that is a good trend at all. I very strenuously object. But sticking with sporting venues, and people like to go to sports. Yes, it's like it is. The circus is part of the bread and circuses for some. I think I enjoy sports. I think one can enjoy sports without being a brainwashed zombie. But they probably use those venues as experimental sites. And I remember, experimental ways to phase in certain things that they want to, certain changes that they want to make. I remember the first time I found out that everything was cashless. I ordered like an ice cream. Like an ice cream sandwich or something, and gave the vendor a $10 bill, and she said reproachfully, "Well, everything is cashless here." And I said, I don't have a card. And she just sort of let me have it, let me have the ice cream, but she was like sort of acting bitchily towards me, like I should have known better, or like there's signs everywhere, I should have known that it's cashless. A cashless system means that you can be monitored even more closely. It means they can see where you are, because every time you make a purchase with your check card or credit card, but let's just say with the check card, because that's the check cards didn't used to exist. It used to be you either had to pay with cash, or some places allowed for you to write a check. Now it's pretty much the check card. That's something that comes out of your actual bank account. So it's not like a credit card, but it's still on plastic, and it's still something where the sale is registered. It's there to be found. It's there to be tracked down. So if they want to track you down, and I know some people out there will say, well, if you don't do anything wrong, if you're being a law-abiding citizen, then what do you have to fear, right? Well, what you have to fear is that maybe the powers that be aren't just interested in pursuing those they deem to be criminals. Maybe they're often interested in pursuing people who who they see as I don't know, stirring up problems, you know, because of the things that they write in their blogs, or what have you. So maybe they want to follow you, see what you're up to. If you really think, if you honestly think that's far-fetched, I don't have anything more to say to you. You have a touching but truly foolish trust in those who claim to be your betters. But as I said in that prior video, I think the more you look at power as it is mostly constituted in the world today, the more you should be apprehensive about making yourself traceable. Whether you're planning to do anything of a criminal nature or not, if you're living the way that you want to live and speaking up about the things that mean something to you, and not just going along with whatever the current thing is, then as likely as not, you've probably been red flagged somewhere, and they're probably keeping an eye on you. I'm pretty sure they're keeping an eye on me. Not because I'm so important, but just because I've been found out. It's not really so much that I was found out. I just never hid anything. So yeah. So there you go. Can anything stop this trend towards cashlessness? I guess that if there was like a widespread effort from a lot of people to just spend cash, to use cash for their purchases, then that might change things. But I can't really tell people what to do. I know that it's a pain, and sometimes, you don't want to carry a ton of cash on you necessarily, for obvious reasons. And it's not always convenient to go to the bank and withdraw cash. And even going to the bank and withdrawing cash, even that, I'm sure they'll notice that. Like, ooh, he just withdrew $400. Why is he withdrawing $400 in cash? That's suspicious. But then the truth is, if you're paying with cash, then they can't monitor your purchases, or it's much harder to do so. I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. I'm an ignoramus about all that stuff, all that technical stuff. But anyway, just thought I'd record this addendum to my video from the other day. Thanks for watching.